Well, earlier, RT's Fiorella Isabel took us through what got Ecuador into this unprecedented crisis in the first place.
What we're seeing now is a civil conflict between the organized crime and the state. Now, this has been a long time brewing in Ecuador, but this is all due to neoliberal policies influenced by the United States. Now, when I say a right-wing type of neoliberal policy, I mean the U.S. coming in there and dictating the country's foreign policy. Now, when former President Rafael Correa was in office and as he left in 2017, Ecuador was the second safest nation in Latin America. It had a very low crime rate at about 5.8 homicides out of 100,000 per 100,000 people. And then when Lenin Moreno, who was the following president, replaced him, there came in a more Western-backed type of policy, and that also was followed with Guillermo Lasso, who was the president before Daniel Noboa. Now, this organized crime has come through those administrations, leading in corruption, because these former administrations did everything they could to expel Correísmo, as was called Rafael Correa's policies, and they allowed bribery, they allowed corruption within the administrations and within the police forces as well. So Ecuador had eventually a homicide rate increased to 500%, or around 25.5 out of 100,000 people in 2022. Now, they've also reached high levels of prison violence, as you've seen, with 416 inmates actually brutally murdered since February of 2021. Now, according to the Ecuadorian media and former President Correa, the current criminals did get these arms from police and from military forces within the government because these weapons had gone missing and were largely then found. Now, when we're talking about the U.S.'s presence there, we're talking about multiple high-level U.S. officials coming into Ecuador, traveling, and Lasso himself actually was given a warm welcome at the White House on the past December. And on the eve of that visit, the U.S. Congress passed a U.S.-Ecuador Partnership Act. Now, this act was seeking to further increase bilateral relationships between the United States and Ecuador. And in 2022, Southcom was also there, with the Southcom's Laura Richardson being present when hundreds of thousands of aid for the military in Ecuador was given by the United States. Now, this has largely hurt the country instead of moving it forward, which is what the United States has claimed. There's a mass exodus of people from Ecuador now coming into the United States. When we talk about immigration problems, it's very important to talk about the causes of these immigration problems and understand that Ecuador's debt has also largely increased exponentially since 2014 to about $74.9 billion. So what we're seeing here is Ecuador is a prime example of what happens when a country abandons their sovereignty in favor of doing what the United States wants.
So it just shows that there's so much more to the story that meets the eye. Critics of Noboa are now looking at this chaos and saying that he should take full responsibility for all of it. Tell us more about Daniel Noboa, the country's youngest ever elected leader.
Yeah, well, he's 35 years old. He's very young. I mean, he hails from a billionaire oligarch background. His father is Alvaro Noboa, who owns the Noboa Corporation. Now, he's a banana tycoon. They export bananas in Ecuador. And he was elected on October 15th of 2023, so he's barely been in office. He's extremely inexperienced. He doesn't really have a huge political background, but his father had wanted to run for office many times, and he was born in Miami, Florida, so he has a U.S. background as well. In fact, he was actually educated in the most prestigious universities. He got his bachelor's at NYU. He actually studied at Harvard and got an MBA from Northwestern University. So you know that he's definitely in step with the type of U.S. foreign policy that many people in Ecuador have criticized, which is what led to this moment. Now, he also tried to secure immediately funds with the IMF. This is something we've seen happen to countries like Argentina that has led it to a downward spiral. And his policies as far as foreign affairs have been largely pro-West. Now, it seems like he is following in his father's footsteps in terms of cooperation and cozying up to the West. And it doesn't seem like this is going to lead in a very good direction, because right now, recently Peru has actually launched forces to its border with Ecuador in order to secure its border, because the situation seems to be getting out of control. And many are asking, what is the solution to this crisis? Well, one of the things that the leader, Daniel Noboa, has said is he's going to build prisons. But before he does that, he's got to get the police and the military to control these criminal gangs that have pretty much taken over and caused so much terror and chaos.